So first off, let's talk about this animation, the animation techniques. And so I think the best way to experiment with this is to choose a couple different shapes from the element list. So you'll notice on the top left, if you're in editor mode, right? Everybody's in editor mode. There's different options like workspace, room, element, user, edit, help, right? And under element, that's how you add new things to a space, like add new tools, and you'll see there's insert shape, which is the third option down. And so you can insert, just choose a couple shapes. Maybe you want to insert a triangle. I'm going to do a square here. So there's square, circle, triangle, arrow. Pick what you want to put in. You can really use any of them to animate with. So just take a second to do that. If you guys have a question about that, just shout out. Once we have these set up, then I'm going to change the color of them. And so that's just selecting on the triangle, right? And then going over into the properties on the right-hand side. So I'm going to make this maybe a red. I'm going to make the square more of a blue. And so now we have these shapes, right? The first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to want to set up how they should look at the beginning of the animation. So what I'm going to kind of call point A, right? Point A in time. And so what that can be is my younger brother is coming into Sage. I'm just in the middle of a call. No, I'm not coming. Thank you. Thanks for the love and appreciation. We've just had 11 puppies. Our foster dog has given birth to 11 puppies. And so
wow.
it's an exciting day. This is the least I can say. So regarding animation, I'm going to set this up into what I want the beginning of the animation to look like. So let's say puppy picks place. Yes. Got them over there. Next training Tuesday. So I'm going to just kind of set up this order of shapes, right? Okay, maybe that's the graphic that I want to go with at the beginning. And then the next step is to insert a action button. So an action button is how we change the attributes of different elements, different properties in ohyay. And so the way that you add an action button in is in that top bar of the room, where you saw workspace, room, element, user, edit, help, all those controls. You can add an action button by going under element and insert element, which is the first option under elements. And then there's action button. And so you just insert that action button and it should come up like that. And so when you're selected on that, you'll see in the property panel on the side, right? You can set actions. You have all these different controls. And there's this thing called snapshot layout, right? And that's what we're going to want to use here. So what that does is it basically takes a picture of things you have selected in a layout and saves where they are, what they look like, how big they are, their XY coordinates, their scale, all of that. And so we're going to click Start Snapshot. Then you should see something come up in the top left of your screen that says Select all elements to snapshot, then press Take Snapshot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these 4 elements, the square, triangle, circle, arrow, and I'm going to press Take Snapshot in the top left. And so that's just recorded the position of these elements. And I'm going to label this button right here. I'm going to label it with point A or starting point, whatever you want to do to notate that this is the beginning point. So the next thing we're going to do is now set our point B, or the next point where we want the animation to go to, right? And so you can rearrange your shapes however you want to. I'm going to make mine a bit bigger, and then I'm going to look into trying to maybe overlap them a little, coming up with a different variation here. Maybe the arrow gets a little longer and moves down and backwards. And so I'm gonna fine tune what I want that to look like. And also change stuff like, you can change opacity of them. You can change other characteristics like that, and those will be part of the animation. So however you want to alter stuff. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing again. So I'm going to insert another action button right here. And I'm going to title that point B. And I'm going to do the same start snapshot, right? Like that. And then the snapshot option should come up in the top left corner. I'm going to select the elements that I want to animate. So again, these 4 shapes. And I'm going to click Take Snapshot. So now I have point A and point B. They're recorded. And so when I click point A, they move to point A. And I click point B, they move to point B. So you can notice there that the orange circle is kind of moving slower than the other ones. And so this is where the animation part comes in, right? We've set these 2 points. We've set where we wanted at point A. We've set where we wanted at point B. And now there's this in-between phase where it's moving from point A to point B, the actual action of it. And the way that you set animation is not in the button, but on the element itself. So you're going to want to select all these elements. And if you go to the properties here, you'll see settings for animation. You see animation transition, animation curve, animation duration. You can search that. You can search for animation, and it should come up right here. And so we want to make sure the animation transitions are on. Animation curve, ease in, ease out is generally works pretty well, so we can just leave that. And the most important setting to look at here is the animation duration. So I'm going to try and set this to, I think maybe I'll go for about 5. So that's saying 5 seconds. It's going to take 5 seconds for my square, circle, triangle, and arrow to move from point A to point B. And because I have them all selected, it's setting all of them to that time. I could set different ones individually, which I can show you in a second, but let's just take a look at this. So now when I click point A, they slowly move over the course of 5 seconds to point A. When I click point B, they slowly expand over the course of 5 seconds to point B. And so what you can at that point do is look and say, okay, well, maybe I don't actually want my arrow to animate. Maybe I want that to be 0 seconds. It just pops. And maybe I want my square to animate over the course of 2 seconds, and the triangle to animate over 3 seconds, and the circle to animate over 4 seconds. So just to cap this off, important just to remember that you can set point A, point B, but this animation technique can be used for anything like a hover action, can be used for property effectors as they're moving across the screen. It's on the element level. So animation is set by selecting the element and then choosing the animation duration for that element, regardless of how you're doing it. So the next thing that we wanted to talk about is these atmospheric overlays. So for atmospheric overlays, we're gonna change our scene here. And so if you want to follow along and you're familiar with the tool, you can go ahead and do this as well by changing the background image right up here. If you select background and click that image, you'll have a panel that opens up that allows you to choose different background images. But what we're going to do is we're going to place a image on top of this background, right? And so the way that you insert an image is you go again to that element list, insert element the same way you did the action button. And then in there, probably about 10 or 11 down, there's an option to insert an image. And so that's now on my screen, and it automatically opens up this option to put an image into that. And I'm not sure you might be able to see that kind of come up on the side there. So I can scroll through a bunch of these different options for images, and I'm gonna pick one that is a sunset. So up here, if you search sunset, these two sunset options come up, and you're going to want to click that one of these. I think this one's probably the better one to click on. So you can see that's now inserted as an image on your screen. What we're going to do is we're going to take that image and put it on top of everything. So it should cover you, it should cover the background, it should cover everything in the room. And one thing that we're going to want to do actually before we do that is in the side panel here, when you're selected on the image, you're going to want to click this toggle to make it full screen so that it fits the whole screen. So you see, again, just make sure that the image is toggled to all four corners instead of the inside. So now we have that enlarged, it's covering everybody. So when I'm selected on this image, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go into my side panel and I'm going to blur it. And so I'm going to search blur. It's one of your filter settings, and I'm going to turn it up to about 8. So, hey, there reset. And so now that I have it turned up all the way, or turned it up to 8, you can experiment. Maybe 10 even makes it a little more blurred. I'm gonna turn the opacity down a bit, which is right up here, and then I'm gonna put a mixed blend mode on it. So a mixed blend mode, you can just search for mixed blend mode. These are just different ways of mixing the foreground and the background. And so you can play around. There's a lot of different options that you can go for here. You can look through till you find one that you like. I think the overlay looks nice right here. Play with the opacity. And so then you can see here as I'm turning the opacity up and down, right? When opacity's all the way up, I feel like I'm a lot more integrated into the lighting of this scene because my coloring very much matches the coloring of the room around me, right? Versus when I turn this down, if my lighting's different, right? It doesn't quite all match into the scene in the same way. And so in certain scenes, you feel that more so than in others. And you can think about, it doesn't have to be a sunset image that you're overlaying. It could be, a sunny day, but generally you want to overlay an image that has some vibrant color or something that you can really utilize, create that atmospheric setting, some lighting effect. So you can see now in the background, it's kind of like this almost invisible layer that is an image that's really blurred out and mixed in. The second thing that you can do with this is have it be a video instead of a still image. And so you'd be going through the same process. Instead of putting an image element in, you'd put a video element in. And you can do that the same way by going to the elements drop down in the top left corner, inserting a video element, which is at the very bottom of the list. So let's for this one, let's try the clouds passing by. So if you want to just search for clouds, this option comes up, which is a video of clouds passing by. I'm going to select that. So now I have this cloud video overlaid. I want to do the same thing. I want to make sure that that's full screen. So I'm going to toggle it, this toggle here. Remember, full screen. And then I'm going to expand that to cover the entire screen. Give me a second to do that. And so then so you can see this overlay here. So what I want to do next is I'm going to take out the image. So you see this full screen now. I'm going to set this so that it automatically plays. So you just can search for play in the element list, play. And so you're going to say loop. You want to select loop and play on user enters, which allows it to automatically play. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did for the image. So I'm going to go to blur. I'm going to set that up to about 8. I'm going to go to mixed blend mode. And I'm going to try overlay here. You could try a couple different ones, see what you like the most. And then I'm gonna play this video. And so what you should see now is it may be hard to see it with me in the top corner small, but if you enlarge me and the background, you should be able to see this kind of very subtle movement of light on the back of the screen. And you can change that or make it more prominent by adjusting contrast and things like that. Contrast, brightness, to try and kind of accentuate where you want it to. You can also try and change the colors to make it feel more blue, green, pink, purple, whatever atmosphere you're going for. And I think that the key thing from a design perspective to notice here is that it's changing the background of the room, but it's also changing me as the participant. So consequently, it feels a lot more like me and the background are kind of one medium versus these separated out components. I'm gonna hand it over to Court to jump up here and share some more really cool tools that you can use.
For my tutorial, I'm going to show you kind of like another way that you can take this, kind of the more dark and moody approach. So we're going to switch the scene up. We're gonna undo the beach vibes and go more Halloween. All right, so I'm gonna just remove this filter, and we're gonna do the same thing that he did with the background. We're gonna change to a background that I pre-uploaded. It should just be called Quartz Image. All right, cool. So now that we have our dark and moody mansion, we're going to try and bring in some moonlight from that window. This effect works best on a dark background like this, or a background that has kind of like a dark overlay. So maybe like a dark full screen overlay that you've reduced the opacity on, or reduced the transparency. But this background is dark enough for our effect to work. So what we want to do is at the top of the screen, we're going to add a new element. So right next to room at the top bar, it says element. We're going to click on that, and we're going to select insert shape, and we're going to insert a triangle. And so we should have a triangle on our screen, and you can resize that by dragging the corners. And I'm going to kind of make it, I'm going to set it at the center of our scene and just kind of drag it down to the bottom to make it seem like that light is coming from our window and shining across the room, around across the bottom floor. And I'm gonna just expand it a little bit. All right, that should be good enough. It doesn't have to cover the entire window. And so now we have this gray triangle in the center of our scene. First thing we want to do is change the color of it to a white. So on the right side in your properties panel, while this triangle is selected, on the right side on the properties panel under style, we're going to change the background color to a white. And click save. And now we're going to change that mixed blend mode like Elijah showed you in the last tutorial. So still with our triangle selected, we're going to scroll down to our filters, and we're going to change the mixed blend mode to color dodge. And you should get something weird looking like this. What color dodge is doing, it's like grabbing all of the color data from the image behind it and pulling it to the front based on how bright this triangle is. And what we can do now to get a more realistic lighting effect is reduce the brightness of it. So still with our triangle selected under filter and the properties panel, brightness, we're going to bring that down to, I say like a, let's see, 0.6 looks cool. Let's do 0.6. And now you see we have like a nice bright scene, a nice bright like triangle, almost like transparent in the center. But we still have hard edges along the sides of the triangle. So we're just going to soften those a bit to give it a more like realistic lighting effect. So with that triangle still selected, right above brightness, the last option that we just adjusted, we're going to change the blur. We're going to bring it up Let's see what looks good. Let's do like 30. I think 30 is good. So I mean 0.3, I should say. So we'll do 0.3 or somewhere around there. And that will give us a nice moonlight type effect. So now that we have our moonlight, what I like to do when I'm working on multiple layers is I also like to lock the last layer that I was working on, just so I don't move it accidentally. To do that, you just want to select the triangle again, and at the top, under element, the very first category in the properties, just hit lock, because we won't need to move that. So now that's locked in place, we have our moonlight, our moonlit room. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our flashlight for searching for clues. So we're going to add an image, just like Elijah showed you in the last one. At the top is a little image icon right next to the lightning bolt and next to the camera. We're going to click that, and it's going to ask us to search for another image. You can type in flashlight. It should show up. You should see my black flashlight there. And it's going to have kind of like a box around it. I don't really like that box, so you can grab like the left corner and kind of drag it in to kind of make it a little more narrow and fit around the flashlight a little bit more. So the parts you grab are just going to be the flashlight. This feels a little bit more believable. And we're going to need to rotate the flashlight a little bit. So with the flashlight selected, we're going to scroll down to transform and rotate Z. Now you can rotate it any way you like. I just like to put it at like a nice angle for searching for clues. About there. So I have it at like a negative 75 about. And this next part is basically the same trick that we used for the triangle, except this time we're going to use a circle. So we're going to go back up to the top bar and add a new element. So select element, insert shape, and we're going to select a circle. Now we got our gray circle. Let's enlarge it a bit. It's a good flashlight, spotlight shape. That's good. We're going to change it white again. It's good. So I changed it white again by changing the background color under style in the properties panel while the circle's selected. And then same thing as the triangle, going back down, changing the mixed blend mode to color dodge under the filter property. And the brightness for this one, we're going to bring, we're going to actually leave this one a little bit high because spotlights are kind of bright. So I'm going to leave this one at 0.5. And then the blur, we're actually going to leave the blur quite low because we want our spotlight to have a good rim on it. So I'm going to put the spotlight blur to a 0.15. All right, so now we have our spotlight. I'm actually going to enlarge it a little bit more. Now we want to link both of these. So with our circle selected, holding down Shift and then also selecting the flashlight. With both of those selected, you're going to click Element again at the top bar, and click Create Group. So it's going to group these two elements together. And now what we want to do is we want to make these draggable. So while they're still selected, over in the Properties panel, down under the category Interaction, there's going to be an option called Draggable, and you're going to check that box. So now that it's draggable, when you move these two elements around, they're going to follow each other. And so this effect is cool for creating, cool puzzles. You can have the spotlight be like a mask to reveal certain clues. You can even have like candles in the room. I kind of combine this trick and the video filter trick that Elijah just showed you to kind of have like a candle flicker effect to create some really cool moody atmospheres.
I'd love to see you use it as a mask.
A mask?
Yeah, like you were just talking about.
Okay.
If everyone else is okay with that.
Okay. For the mask, the only difference is that our circle shape has to be an image to use it as a mask. So masks can only be images. So the way we can do that is, I would say, let's ungroup these. I'm going to click element with those selected and ungroup. And instead of this circle, I'm gonna delete this circle, and we're gonna add another image. This should work well enough. It's circular. So I just brought in this badge. If you wanted to be like a nice white circle, you can probably create like a circle maybe on Photoshop, or just find like just like a white circle or something on Google Images and bring it in. Let's see. I think this should work well enough. So what I'm going to do for this one is, let's see what happens when we change its blend mode. And this is on the spot, so if this doesn't work, I apologize. So to change the blend mode to color dodge and blur the outlines a bit. Got like a nice little it's like bat signal type thing going on. So we have our spotlight image, and now we just need something for the mask to reveal. So we're gonna need another image. Let's see, there's a nice key here. This key is good. Let's say you're trying to find this key in the room. And we're gonna make it small. I'm just gonna put it, let's say I'll put it here on the couch. All right, so now what you want to do is make sure that you're going to select this key, and down, if you scroll down under advanced, it's going to say mask elements. And this, when you select the edit icon, the little pencil, it's going to ask you what do you want the mask of this item to be. Basically, what element will reveal this item to the viewer when they are aligned with one another. So I'm going to select the badge, and the badge is basically the circle image that we have there. So and check that box, and the key disappears. So now we're going to combine our flashlight and our badge image by we're going to group select them again, and go to element and hit create group. And now when you drag them around, when you drag it over the key, it should reveal the key. You see? And another way to actually make this a little more believable is, let's see, I'm going to ungroup these two elements again. And if you don't have like a good like white circle that you could use, if you just want some like a circular mask, if you select this circle and you actually bring down the opacity, you can actually do that. So that's the under the properties at the top, right under where the coordinates of the element is. You can reduce the opacity, and it still works as a mask, but it doesn't show up entirely in the scene. So I'm going to go back to element and regroup those. And now when I drag them around, it still works as a mask. So I hope that answered your question, Taylor. Awesome. Any other questions, Risa, Deo? Any of you guys have any questions? All right, awesome. So I'm glad you guys were able to join us today. I hope this gave you some cool tricks.